emerging. I also want to extend my acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today, and also recognise that the traditional guardians of the land have provided security and peace of mind for their communities for thousands of years. Well, welcome again, and this is a forum where the Public Trustee is bringing all stakeholders together to talk about the prevention of elder abuse. It's an important topic, and it's an underreported topic. Through our Customer First agenda, the Public Trustee is undertaking the most significant reforms in its organisational history, and these include establishing supported decision making for our customers. These include establishing a customer advocate office, establishing a financial independence pathway. Importantly, we have also embarked upon community education as a central tenet of the Public Trustee's stakeholder engagement strategy. We deliver community education sessions in order to educate the broader community about elder abuse prevention, to talk about the importance of life planning, and to also empower and educate the community so they can take action to protect themselves and their loved ones. We know that every community is not the same. So joining us today, we are pleased to say, is Uncle Wayne Fossey, Chair of the Elder Abuse and Valued Persons Advisory Committee at the University of Southern Queensland, Ben O'Rourke, Senior Relationships Coordinator at Relationships Australia, and Jodie Curry, the Public Trustee Regional Director for the Sunshine Coast community. These experts represent key parts of the sector and play vital roles in the protection and prevention of elder abuse here on the Sunshine Coast. At today's forum, each of our experts is going to give a short presentation about their experiences in the sector and key learnings they would like to share. Their invaluable experience and important contributions will help us to understand and explore effective ways of working together at a local level to address important issues relating to elder abuse that are being faced here in this community. Look, our next presenter today is Uncle Wayne Fossey. Uncle Wayne was born in Cubby country, located in Nambour. He is an elder for the Gold Coast and hinterland areas, and also for the University of Southern Queensland across Stanthorpe, Toowoomba, Ipswich and Springfield campuses. Uncle Wayne also chairs the university's Elders and Valued Persons Advisory Committee, which oversees research into Aboriginal community development in Toowoomba. Uncle Wayne is also President of the Bunya People's Aboriginal Corporation. Would you all please welcome Uncle Wayne Fossey.
Jingri, everybody, in the language that we speak and we converse in which is Yugambeh. Yugambeh is just one of those wonderful languages that has a pile of emotional words. So it's we would say Jingri Wallawalu Bajirul Budjara, which means how are you? How's your spirit? How do you feel? How does your heart feel? And it's that separation of an understanding of how your brain feels and how your gut feels. And it's very important to do that. So if you know anything about Chinese cultures, they have qi. There's a whole thing called gadang in our language. There's a whole range of things there. So how do you feel to do that? Russell, thank you for that. Russell's given me some really good insights from that last presentation into some of the things that I dealt with as recently as yesterday. Could I acknowledge also the people who walked this landscape before, Gubby or Cubby. I was born here in Nambour Hospital. I looked at the park out the front, Mr. Venatus, who used to have the picture theatre in town that segregated us to one side and other people to the other side. We got the best seats, always. But we were separated. So it's interesting to see how times have changed. Billy Venatus was quite a character. So what I'd say to you is that there are lots of things that are here, but there's lots of things in change as well. So I came all country this morning in a different place, many miles away from Mitchell, and I had a commitment there that I couldn't challenge. And just before I left and jumped in the car this morning at 4 a.m, Artie gave me this, which was, it's actually from a bottle tree off a property which is there, which is the Yumba. And she said, and this is a very common thing, about cleaning the room. So normally we'd smoke a room or do things like that, which chases away all those sort of spirits and things of the past and creates that sense of cleanliness within ourselves. Unless you're asthmatic, it's great. But this is one of those things that you've done. So what she talks about is brushing. So we brush areas and we clean areas. So the speaking spaces are often brushed and cleaned as part of that. This is a very big bottle tree, a monstrous bottle tree. And she was very insistent in putting it in my hand. So I made sure to do that. And the other unusual thing is, besides my fact that I think I've made a mess again with the bunya plants, those of you who recognise this, the bunya is a part of healing. And the bunya is not just food, it's a way in which people came together. So people came together in their thousands. We've got about 12,500 recorded attending the bunya festival on the Bunya Mountains. Locally, we have a lady here, an elder called Bev Han, and Bev Han runs the thing up on the side of the mountain, on the Mullaney side, and so that's part of the healing of this side of the country as well. And there's another group up to the north of Kabi country, which is Kilkeevan. So on your seat you have a nut, and this is how it originally looks. It's quite large. This one came in at over 9 kilos, so you wouldn't want to get hit by it, and you certainly wouldn't want to park your four-wheel drive under it, which I've seen unfortunately happen. And you'll notice that it's encased, and I'm making a terrible mess, but it's encased in something. Now, you may wonder what this has got to do with elder abuse, but it's a part of a healing process. Often this is the way we'll get a conversation with people, by a plant, piece of fruit or whatever. So what you've got is a nut, just so that you know, and when you break that out, there is a nut inside that, right? I'm putting it in my hat. And unfortunately, the hat is going to be a gift to you at the end, but it's a bit grubby. And there is a nut inside that, which is the edible nut. Okay, so it's the story of our lives where you break up things into pieces to get an understanding, right? So we talk about a rule of 3, what's called Jurathanga, which means you don't make a decision, right? And you've said it perfectly by the whole range of things that has been presented here today. So Jurathanga means that, oh gee, I want a sports car, and my father says, you don't want a sports car, you need a four-wheel drive, that's your lifestyle. And my mother or my cousin or my uncle would say, really? Yeah, you want a V8? So you come back, triangulate your decision making. And we correlate that against the joints in our finger, right? So there are 3 pieces that make up our fingers. So whenever you do that, people will often put their hands up, and that's why you see many drawings of hands all around the countryside, because it relates to both dad, mum, children, and also the joints of 3, plus the idea of spirit and body that goes together across a lot of our cultures. So I'll introduce you to those sort of concepts, because one of the key things is about healing. Elder abuse is really hidden in our community. It really is, in the communities that I'm talking about. And I've worked all over Australia in various places. Part of that, and excuse this because I am going to give it to you later, but is our local housing cooperative HAT, which on the symbol is which is an eagle. So eagle as in eagle bee, bean lee, that sort of idea. But part of that stuff, we talk about our life as being a nest, an eagle's nest. Now, if you've ever seen an eagle's nest, it is a hell of a mess, right? It probably looks like my car does at the moment. It's got sticks going out all over the place, and yet nurturing and caring in a group is what happens. Okay, so part of that is this power of this particular eagle. Now, it's called Jindi Mibben, and Mibben is the eagle, or the giant eagle, the wedgie, as such, or it can be an osprey depending where you are. And Jindi is the housing of it, the coming together. So it's very important to know that you've got language and symbols when you're dealing with Aboriginal people to be able to do that. And those symbols relate to all the things which we've got. And it was clean, sorry about that. If you manage to get there's a nut there, if you manage to get one, by the way, with a little piece hanging out of it, the nurturing for that nut, these nuts I took off probably 4 weeks ago, they're still, you can moisten them again, and that's the growth thing, so that you can actually grow a bunya tree. If you really want a bunya tree on your patio, it's probably not a great idea, but if you need some of that, it's great. So look, one of the things is about elder abuse to me is about the sheer silence in our community, about how hidden it is, and the factor is much, much, much greater than what we expect. And there are different sorts of communities. So I've come across this morning from a very small community, which has got native title, and it got native title about 10 years ago, and there's a great deal of greed attached to native title. It really is a legalistic comment where a lot of barristers make a lot of money and a lot of people don't benefit, in my opinion. So what happens is, it's not part of a sovereignty issue, it's a part of a separate issue about legal ownership. And it was originally based on a TI system of gardens. So if you go into the Act and have a look at carefully the reasoning behind it, it's quite a complicated process, but it doesn't apply to a whole range of people on the mainland. What you will find is a confusion with the word elder. So the word elder with a capital E. As a near 72-year-old, I've been around a while and I've been on this country, so I know it particularly well. So I was looking for somebody from our community, like the other day we had Charlie and others. Here you'll have people like Lyndon Davis, who's been involved with dance as such, to make one of those contacts. You'll have people who runs his own dance company, Dance for Us, about 6 weeks ago on the Bunyas. You'll find that you have other individuals who are into art, like Jandamara Cab. Okay, so a famous portraiture artist living on the northern part of the coast. There are other organisations, for example, the organisation Boach and Maroochydore. But when you're trying to help people, sometimes it's very difficult to go to that door or to reflect that door. So what I see as a great deal on the coast, it's actually a bit different from Toowoomba. There is no, and I said this in Toowoomba too, there's no such thing as the Sunshine Coast, right? It really is. There's all these different Sunshine Coasts, right? And it's not based on whether you live at Noosa or whether you live at Caloundra. It's not like that. There are many Caloundras. They're there. And as a child of 50, I know that particularly well. My parents came here for a honeymoon, so they have a very definite definition of what is Caloundra at that time. So what I'm trying to get across is really the concept is we have different interpretation as to what is our environment, our community, our social elements, which is a part of elder abuse that I deal in. One of the things that you'll see very obvious in some communities, and not so much in this community, but you will see it, and if you have a careful look, and I saw it in Dalby community on Sunday of this week, it's a concept of humbugging people. Now, humbugging is a Western Australian term more often than here, and it means don't take the money of somebody, don't take their car, don't take their pin, don't take their car, don't take their rider mower. I see everything like that. And so one of the things I dealt with last week was a person who'd stolen a rider mower, right? Oh, you don't need the rider mower anymore, you're too old for that. You're a bit silly, you're a bit womba, as they say, and we'll take your rider mower. No, it's all right, the rider mower's gone, never to be seen again. So it's all that sort of stuff. We see people who humbug outside Centrelink, and so it's the highlight of the day, or outside a bank after you've been to Centrelink and then got to the cash to be able to do it. We see fights and we see violence, we see all sorts of things around that. So if you work in more remote communities, it becomes really obvious how tense those communities are. And so the dealing with the individuals in that community is really important. You can know where the power structure's like. The biggest issue that I find is shame. So people are shamed to report. They are shamed to go back to the police. They are shamed to go back to any sort of service that may be there. Because A, they're a white service, and B, they're a service which just reinforces my shame. Therefore, I am not a good grandfather. I'm not a good grandmother. I'm not a good parent. I'm not a good person in my community. And everybody will remember and point to me. I go down the street, you reported that to whatever. And that's what I see just all the time. Aboriginal people also are the custodians of history and stories, and it's what we call the black grapevine. And that black grapevine is really strong. And if you've ever been in the legal system, if you've tried to track somebody who's supposed to go to court the next morning and find out they're on Palm Island the afternoon, and that's happened to me a few times. Yeah, you're right, but it's court tomorrow. Yeah, you're right. And then all of a sudden, where the hell is he? Oh, he's on Palm now. Geez, how'd you get there? I couldn't have got there in that time. So we see all those sorts of things, but I think there's a defined silence. We have an issue which is young people perpetrators of violence and theft against elders. And certainly in remote communities, but it's certainly everywhere as such. So they'll wait at granny's house, they'll wait at somebody's house to take that card, that pin, that whatever, with the best excuse on the planet. And it's the idea also that we see so common. Really, that car is not required because one day that car will be mine. That's the sort of idea that we have, just as a constant thing. I'm really interested in trying to support people in their social and sort of emotional well-being. How do you get to be 72? How do you get to be able to be sane on the planet and stay there to be able to do it? I'm seeing increasingly young people in their 40s, and I saw some, unfortunately, last week, the end of last week, in their 40s with dementia, right, to be able to do it. That doesn't include sniffing, it doesn't include people wearing cans around their neck and sniffing petrol and avgas, which I've also seen last week. You know, there's a whole range of damaged individuals who have experienced loss. You know, I think about the guy I saw at Dalby on the weekend in a rotunda, the Rotary Rotunda, cold, freezing Dalby on the weekend, and wet as can be, this guy being taunted by members of the community and trying to take his money. He'd just been to McDonald's, he'd got his sleeping bag out, he was trying to dry his shoes and his gear, and he was being taunted by other individuals to take that. And we've got to sort of break down a whole social process. And you imagine if you're 60 and trying to do that, or if you imagine if you're an elder member of our community. Often the police don't know what to do in terms of being able to do it. Our communities often reflect a great deal of tension. So the tensions that are there, it's very hard for you guys to become service providers to walk in and say, right, there's the problem. And sometimes the instantaneous problem solvers are not the ones we need. What we need are the listeners, the people who listen, the people who spend a bit of time, what I call the 12 cups of tea. I'd hate to think of how many cups of tea I've had in the last week since we did the last seminar, right? It's just like the high tide, the meniscus level has risen a long time back. It's important to know our community. It's important to know the tensions. It's important to know the key champions of those communities that are the doers, the people who will make the change, who you can listen to. It's important to know some of the cultural aspects to be able to do that. It's important to know that there are organisations, and you know, I can only recommend the initiatives that have been put forward by the Public Trustee, because we often felt quite helpless until now. So we would tend to dump on organisations, and organisations did not do the cultural fit terribly well. And it's a really hard thing to do, because there are so many, on the coast, there are so many cultures on the coast. But it's easy if you're in Nullangu territory like I was yesterday. And so it's an advantage sometimes for organisations like the Public Trustee to become part of that. Instead of Santos or a mining company getting involved, let an agency get involved, you know, and it makes it much more real. I think there's a great fear in our community, and that fear is often that fear of being judged. You know, that I mentioned the feeling of shame, but it's judging you as an individual, it's judging your family, right? Just because we did that to help grandma, that doesn't mean that it actually worked. And the definition of elder varies greatly across community. So I've been an elder in community. I didn't give myself that title. Other people gave me that title from things that I've done. And you know, I worked in schools and I did all that sort of stuff as well, and your community member housing cooperatives, all that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, people said you could be able to do that. We had one of our persons last Monday receive an Order of Australia, right, as the chairman of our group. So we're obviously doing something right across all our communities to be able to do that. What you'll find is confusing is family obligations, right? So you are obliged to do this. So if I take the nearby area of the Munajali area that I know, Bay Desert to you guys, would be the first shepherds were Aboriginal. Yeah. And if you wanted a sheep and your elder came up and said, I want that sheep, yeah, okay, that's your sheep. So the second group of shepherds were, and we do a thing called the Elders Walk once a year. Second group of shepherds were the Chinese, who go, oh no, it's the sheep of the boss, right, to be able to do that. And so we did the Elders Walk because a lot of the Chinese didn't survive in our area. There's a huge population of Chinese, tens of thousands of people walked in that territory. But what I'm trying to say to you is that there is obligations that are built in to the systems that we have in our own particular societies, in our communities and in our structures. I'd make a comment on the coast. The big issue on the coast that I see now is housing. So the house issue that was raised by you is just so important. The nesters, the return nesters are coming back. They're not just coming back by themselves, they're bringing the horde with them. And what we found is the other day we found a place that was referred to with us, and I referred to somebody locally. They had 23 people living in a 2-bedroom house here, right? Now that's just monstrous. It's impossible to get any sort of social cohesion. It's impossible to organise a fridge. It's impossible to organise any sort of idea about money, and it's impossible to know where you're going to put the nappies. You know, really on every level it is just impossible. And that tension of housing is becoming very solid. It's similar to where I've been in the West, which has quite surprised me, the volume just recently. So what I'd like to do is really sort of talk about the concept of humbugging really quickly. So humbugging is really a major concept, and it's up to us also to enforce that. Don't do it, right, to be able to do it. And you know, I started being a principal in a time when caning was applicable. And lots of kids learnt the hard way from me. But I'm not suggesting we institute caning. What I'm suggesting is that we understand the nature of that cultural interaction that goes on and what you have to do, and the fact that it is okay to say, hey, you know, don't do that, right? So we have other elders like us who do so, who walk up and say, right, outside Centrelink or outside whether that's enough, that's just ridiculous. You're trying to do this, and we shame them in public, right? So we can get away with that generally, not always, but we can get away with it generally. So there is a role in society to actually come back and to do a bit more of that legal push, or illegal push as it is, to be able to do that. It's dangerous territory, as you know, but it's also significant. But I think the significant thing that I would see about elder abuse in our communities is the sheer power of what we can make changes, and finding out who's that key person in your community to make that change. And I really think that the concept of educating people about elder abuse, you know, whether you're a policeman, whether you're somebody dealing with DV, social workers, etc. And it was the joy for me after the Toowoomba seminar to have people who are OTs from the hospital in Toowoomba say to me, oh yeah, what about this? So it started a whole grapevine discussion, even if they didn't come to the meeting. You know, they really started this circling of discussions around people. And so I went to something actually with Charlie on wherever it was, Thursday night, and Charlie said to me, oh yeah, what about this, this and this and this? And so, you know, public trustee hasn't had a good rap at various times recently, but this was a good rap. This was a good rap by community from a bottom-up idea saying, hey, these guys are doing a good job. So I think I can only commend any idea to get it out further, and to get it out to individuals, and to get it out to community, and try and doorway it in. So the important thing, we sort of discussed it with Relationship Australia, is know those key people, and key people you can do it. You may do it through art, you may do it through plants, you may do it through other ways that create that, and a symbolic way of doing it as well. Yeah. And the hat is actually yours, and it was brand new, except for some guy chucked the things in.
Thank you so much.
And part of the culture is actually the giving, right? I don't want a hat in return. What I'm trying to suggest to you is that the giving of things like this is really important. So, you know, I gave you a nut today, which you know, if you want to grow one, there's some more here. But it's not a matter of giving you a plant, right? What it is giving you a cultural interface between two things. And that interface may be art, it may be all sorts of things. But it's very important, you know, as Arnie did this, you know, it was so important for her to get up at before 4 a.m. this morning and make sure that she had a branch of a tree that she ripped off beforehand. And that's really sweet, you know, somebody gets up and does that to you. So, you know, be able to share that with somebody, but to share the story behind it is particularly
wonderful.
Yeah. No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you please welcome Becky?
There it is. Sorry.
You're right.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, so I'm Ben O'Rourke. I work for Relationships Australia. Obviously, acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the land, and thank you for that great acknowledgement. Who's heard of us, Relationships Australia? So way back, we were the Marriage Guidance Counselling Centre, but we've come quite far since then. We still centre, though, very firmly on building healthy relationships for stronger communities. So, you know, that's our vision, and we look at the whole of life approach. So our suite of services that we have sits with what we call the senior relationship services. So I sit as the coordinator over those services. With those services, there's some really important ones. We've got the Elder Abuse Prevention Support Service. We're going to go through each of them because it's important to know how to link in with those supports. The Senior Financial Protection Service, the Elder Mediation Support Service, and the Senior Social Connection. Now, each of those services really have its own target and why we need that, because elder abuse is actually very complex, and it integrates with a lot of facets of people's lives. So whether it actually makes someone isolated from the community, whether it's the dynamics with the family, it actually needs a range of specialist services to help the person. So with that, we do have a dedicated line. So that's actually our senior relationship services line, which is different from our general line. So if seniors ring that, or if you ring that, it should be more direct. So that's our 1300 036 232, and also on our website you can find some more information about our services as well. So the first one that I want to talk about is what's called EAPS, so the Elder Abuse Prevention Support Service. So this one is where we have a wonderful partnership with our local community legal services across the state, and on the Sunshine Coast it's with Sunshine Community Legal. One of the most important things around this is knowing the right advice and information. So free legal information and advice is given to seniors through the elder abuse prevention. So the criteria for that is any senior over 60 experiencing or at risk of elder abuse. So that at risk is a big part as well. So for services, it's really knowing that there are those supports out there, and there's, I always say there's no harm in getting the right advice. Speaking with someone like Russell might save you a lot of pain further down in the track. So we've got a dedicated case manager to help guide the person through whatever process they might be. Free legal advice, but also it's around that coordinating support for what that person might need. And sometimes it might actually be that they need to speak to a financial counsellor. So as part of our suite of services, we've got the Senior Financial Protection Service, where we have a dedicated financial counsellor to help seniors navigate what they might be going. Knowing that financial abuse is often one of the biggest things that's happened, undoing that can be a very complex and very difficult thing for an older person to do. So having a financial counsellor, and she's here today, so I'm going to put her on the spot, Sam. She's absolutely wonderful. Having someone like Sam help the older person navigate, even if it's to ring up banks on their behalf and get the paperwork or whatever they might need to do in her specialty that she does, it's there to support the older person. It also might be, and we had some cases recently where it was the older couple did want it, felt obligated to loan the money to the family, but it was a loan. It was a loan, and the family mistook it and thought all the money that was given for food was actually a gift that they didn't have to pay back. But over a period of 12 months, that was like $12,000. It's a lot of money. But the financial counsellor has been able to work with the other party to help with their budget to sort that out so that they can actually make repayments for the older person. So there's no one way that we work with someone. It's really looking at what's best for the older person in this situation. So that's a really important service that we have, our Senior Financial Protection Service. The next one, and obviously and sadly, isolation is one of the biggest things that happen. We all know that the abusers will isolate people. It happens in the DV space and it happens in the elder abuse space. So having connection, again, is also one of the most important safeguards. So we can say the more that you are connected, the more that you are linked in with your community, hopefully, the safer you are. The more you communicate, the more you talk to people around your wishes and what you want, the more people know. So this is a really important service. So at the moment with this service, we're focusing a lot on senior digital literacy. So on the Sunshine Coast, set up in Gympie as well, we've got Jocelyn and Nick who are doing senior digital literacy courses. So they're over like 6 weeks, and we're doing a lot of workshops on improving that. So if we can get people, knowing how to get into MyGov, knowing how to get to My Aged Care Plan, all those really quite hard things to do. People are saying, log into MyGov, you can download your COVID app, and then you can go into places. A lot of seniors, especially up in the Gympie area, weren't going out because they didn't know how to do the digital barcode. So we're really trying to empower seniors to stay connected in that digital space, but also it's around making sure that people can link in to the services that they need as well. So that's a case management service as well, but we also offer a lot of community support and community groups with that service. The last, and I often think the most important, they're all important services, but this one's very close, to one of my passions is around the elder mediation support service. So obviously that is around conflict resolution with families. And we know that unfortunately elder abuse happens in the context of a family break in trust. So someone that you've trusted in your family has actually gone. And that can be really hard to deal with. And as noted, there's a lot of shame, stigma coming forward. And there's a lot of work that often is need to be done with the older person to empower them to speak up, to actually say, no, that was wrong. I'm okay with you living here, but it was only for the first 3 months. You know, it's now been a year and a half. You don't pay rent, you haven't paid rates, you haven't contributed. And that can take some time. So the elder mediation service is really around working with the older person to help empower them. It's centered around the older person, but however, it works within the context of the family. So it's really, instead of mediation, we often say family meeting, because that's kind of the context that we move towards. As you can see, these services are often a suite of services that work. So, you know, someone might get referred into our service, into the elder abuse. They see the senior financial protection service, and they have some elder mediation as well. So with it being quite a complex issue, it does take a range of multifaceted services to help support that person. So we've gone through, you know, and I guess you've heard some stats around what elder abuse is, and one of the biggest things that I want you to leave with is the people that don't seek help. And that's 61% that they're saying at the moment of the people that experience elder abuse are not seeking help. And that's often because they don't recognise it themselves. It might just be a pattern within their family that's always happened. So sometimes it does take someone to sit aside and say, actually, that's not right. What you're experiencing is abuse. And I think that is the job of, you know, if we're in a service position, it is our job to be able to help an older person do that. So physical, emotional, neglect, sexual, financial, went through some stats before. Now the stats differ depending on what study is looked at. That national prevalence study was actually one done focused on the elder mediation that was happening across the state. So that was a cohort of elder mediation. If you go from our phone, from our elder abuse prevention unit, and a lot of those, you will see that financial and psychological are the biggest elements, and definitely financial. You know, it's through and through. Even, you know, through our service, it would be the biggest forms of abuse. Now, that's probably where I'm leading with this. Is elder abuse is everybody's business. And look, both, and I'm glad to say, on a state level and on a national level, there has been movement. You know, we now have a national plan and action against elder abuse. That's actually from the Attorney General's campaign, which is quite a good one. Elder abuse is everybody's business. And then we have our state campaign as well. Together we can stop elder abuse. So if you were to go Elder Abuse Queensland, you would come up with our Queensland material there. That's from the Human Rights Commission. So whether you're looking at from a national level or from a state level, there are resources available. And I think that's what I want to urge people to go off today and say, where can I find more information if I want to know more about this? Nationally, there is a website now. It's called Compass. Who knew about that? So that's a very important one on a national level. We actually have what's called the EAAA, the Elder Abuse Action Group Australia, which is the advisory committee to the Attorney General's Department, which advises on what is the guiding action, exactly what it says, what's the guiding action on elder abuse. And that is a great source of information. You know, if someone was to say, where would I go to get information about elder abuse? It would be there. The Elder Abuse Prevention Unit. So I guess we work as a case management service on a local level for people with capacity who would like to seek help. We have the Elder Abuse Prevention Unit is an anonymous phone line that anyone can call. So that would be your first port of call, I would say. Ring that number. Have a chat with the wonderful people at EAPU and get some more information around what's going on. If appropriate, then they might give you our number or make a referral through to our service. That's a lot more fact sheets and resources that we have. Okay, coming up, so the 15th of June is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. So look, I've made packs up, so if you're from a service, please feel free to take a lot of packs, take them back to your work and give them to your colleagues. So each of them have posters in it for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. We've got some state posters as well, so take your bag, get a lot of resources from that table, take it back to your office, because that's what I'm really trying to promote. So WeAd is on the 15th of June, and it's sad that we have to have a day to raise awareness, but we do. And tip from today is go check out Compass, empower yourself, because elder abuse is everybody's business. Get some resources for WeAd that's coming up, and maybe have a local event at your own office around raising the awareness of elder abuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben, and some great work being done by Relationships Australia there, and very good information of the support services.
In my role today, what I'm going to talk to you about is ultimately focusing on financial abuse and what is financial abuse. So that is about forcing an elderly person to sign over property or assets, misusing or taking an elderly person's money or credit cards, which we've already heard from some of our presenters today, using undue influence or deception to change the terms of an elderly person's will or enduring power of attorney, and also forging an elderly person's signature. So what are some behavioural signs we're looking at here? So we're looking at any sudden or radical changes in behaviour. We're looking at the fear of someone close to them. And again, that could be in a meeting that you might be having or an interview, and you can see that fear on that person. Irritability, shaking, trembling or crying. Depression or social withdrawal. Talk of suicide. So again, that social isolation that we've heard also today through presentations. The lack of interest in getting involved in their usual interests they have. Changes to their sleep patterns or their eating habits, and also presenting as helpless or hopeless or sad. The contradictory statements not associated with mental confusion, and the reluctance to talk openly. Also sometimes that deferral to another person, and again you can see that when you're interviewing or meeting with people, they may be looking to their side to make sure what they're saying is the right thing to be saying. Or worry or anxiety for obvious reasons. So what I'm going to share with you is just some local case studies, which shows that it is real and it is in our communities. So this case study, have to stay on that slide. So case study 1 is about an adult in their late 70s that was diagnosed with dementia and enters aged care. The family were appointed initially as the financial administrator. The family were then removed because there were discrepancies located and identified within their finances, and the public trustee was appointed. Public trustee's role is to investigate and have a look at that financial misuse, and also identify the increasing debts and how did the debts arise. This particular customer was property rich, cash poor. The family occupied the property and had occupied the property for a long period of time. There was no financial contribution from the family. There was non-payment of nursing home fees, so the adult was removed from their home and put into the nursing home, which then incurred a large nursing home debt. There was also access to the adult's bank account for personal use. So again, you can look through the statements and have a look at how an adult would access their bank account once a fortnight when the pension goes in, and then all of a sudden there's tap and goes left, right and centre. A decision needed to be made around the property, And again, I think we've heard it through some of our presentations today, and in this particular case study, it was so important to talk with the customer and try and seek their views as much as we can, regardless of whether they've got a diagnosis of dementia or not. It is so important to communicate with the customer and consult. It is also to talk to the family and consult with the family, talk to them about the options that were available. And some of those options in this particular case was around the purchase of the property. They could purchase the property. They could have looked at a protected persons application, or minimal, make contributions to the outgoings of the property. So again, we worked very closely with the customer, and more so in this particular case with the family around those options. But any decision that needed to be made with the interest of the customer. Case study 2 was very similar, but it was a husband and wife. There were adult children, there was conflict within the family, and the adult children from one party made an application for an administrator to be appointed. Again, very little cash assets, and they were living off an overdraft account. Some family resided on the property in a granny flat. Again, there was increased aggression with the conflict that was occurring. The adults, when we were consulting with them, raised concerns of signing documents that they weren't aware what they were or what they meant. There were solicitors that were acting for the couple, and they were advising us that they were helping refinance the debts. Through the investigation, we located that they weren't actually the couple's regular solicitor, so they'd been taken to a different solicitor to sign those docs and help. There were also signs of legal documents, like a deed of debt agreement being signed, property transfers being signed. Ultimately, the couple didn't have any debt. They lived in their own home, and the family had said, we're going to take care of them. We're going to pay them some money. So we've transferred their house, but we're going to pay them, and we're going to take care of them when they go into the nursing home. The medical evidence, again, also supported the capacity that the couple did lack that capacity to make those large financial decisions around signing contracts. There were also issues around the witnessing of some of those documents, where family had signed those documents. And there were also large withdrawals from the bank account that were unaccounted for, and communication to us was they were loans. The couple were also signed up to be guarantor for business loans. So again, there were a lot of asset disputes and personal items being sold off. I think we can use these case studies as they are not unique to just this region. Every situation has the similar flow. It's also important that in such matters like these that we do consult with the customer, and we also consult with the family. And I think, Ben, you alluded to that. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So it's trying to work out a solution with the adult at the forefront of our mind. But it's also important to give that adult that voice and support the adult in having those conversations that need to occur. And I think, Russell, you mentioned in yours as well, most times when we are consulting with the customer, they don't want to lose that relationship. So any decision we make as financial administrators can impact those relationships. So some key tips to help prevent elder abuse, and I know we've heard quite a few different tips today, but it is reiterating that having a will and having an enduring power of attorney and health directive is so vitally important. Seek independent legal advice about your will and enduring power of attorney, and also include directions in your enduring power of attorney, such as different types of decisions you would like made if you lose capacity. And some of that can be around where do you want to choose to live. Choose 2 people that you can trust to act in your best interest. And if you are loaning money, ensure that they're legally binding. It's also knowing your rights. And again, Ben, you've shared some of this information as well. Our customers and our elderly people do need to know that they have rights and what those rights are and where to go and get that information through the human rights or through elder health. It's also remembering our rights in all our decision making. So children and next of kin may also think that they're entitled to a person's assets before they've actually passed away. And this is actually known as early inheritance syndrome, and it was coined by Dr. Sarah Russell. There's a perception, and again we hear this so often through our roles, it's going to be my money someday anyway. And I think Uncle Wayne Fossey, you alluded to that even in the works that you carry out. The perception that I deserve this because I do so much care work, or they'd want to treat me. So thinking of, I suppose this way of thinking can lead to different actions of elder abuse, such as using money without permission, coercing will changes, or failure to repay loans, and trying to become a financial attorney so that the decision's being taken away from the older person. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of support networks, and again these have been shared through our other presentations as well, but there is a lot of information out there and places where our elderly people can go for help. And that's it. Thank you.